Hey there guys, today we're discussing some savage removal in asunder. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Screw Army by subscribing and turning on the notification. Alrighty guys, so we're discussing asunder. Now, some people don't like these kicker spells because the kicker color adds an additional color to the color identity of some of these cards. And yes, I do feel like if this was mono green or something like that, that it would go in more decks. The fact that it is technically a Golgari card means that it perhaps doesn't go in quite as many decks. But I still think that this is incredibly good removal that should see play in a lot of decks. There's Abzan, there's so many decks, there's Jund, there's just so many decks that this can go in and would go in and whatnot. So this is a great removal spell. If you don't know what it is, don't know what it does, you haven't been paying attention during spoiler season, haven't seen it since it's been released, it's a 2-mana instant, and you can exile target artifact or enchantment for 2 mana, which is very good. Exile-based removal is premium removal. You can kick it for 1 and a black, and exile target non-land permanent instead. Now, I've said this for a while, that all the colors, or at least green and white, need exile-based artifact and enchantment removal. And I've felt like perhaps even green-black needed exile-based permanent removal. Now, that permanent removal is at 4 mana, but that's the kicker cost. So you're not going to cast that part that much of the time. You're going to mostly cast this for 2 mana and exile an artifact or enchantment. Now, when you really need to get rid of that one permanent, this is the best way in those colors, outside of perhaps in Abzan or whatnot. When you're in those colors, then you do have some better options like Anguished Unmaking and whatnot. I do think that this is still in the conversation because you might just want that flexibility as well to be like able to snipe artifact or enchantment or whatnot, and then later on be able to also be able to exile a non-land permanent. So that's really good. It's just super good, and it's super efficient, and even the kicker isn't too bad. 4 mana isn't great, but, you know, like, it's not Anguished Unmaking, it's Utter End that I'm trying to think of, that people still think that that card's decently good and still play it in a ton of decks. So if that card can get away with it being played, which I don't think it should, perhaps I should do a data deviation on that. But anyway, we'll see. But yeah, like, this card is a must-have in a lot of decks that would want this sort of thing. I've been finding that the main thing that I want to exile with some of this sort of removal is the enchantment gods that are indestructible, that aren't really creatures until you have their devotion on, and 9 times out of 10 their devotion's on, so you just can't get rid of them because they're not a creature, so you can't source to plowshares them or whatever to just get rid of them, and they're indestructible, and most of the removal that's out there for artifacts and enchantments is destroy-based, so it's been really annoying to have to face off against Perfrost and things like that. I think Perfrost is like the main one, but the black-white one that is the head of its own deck mostly, but Perfrost isn't usually the head of its own deck, though you can have him as the head of his own deck. But I do find that he winds up in the 99 of many more decks than many of the other ones. So yeah, I find that, you know, having that on the field is a must exile. You must get rid of it as quickly as possible, because if you don't, it's just gonna kill you. You know, there's some that are like that as well. It's like, well, you've got to get rid of their commander, even if they'll cast it next turn. You have to get rid of it so that you've got that 1 or 2 turns, you've got something, you've got an opening, or you've got somebody else who's got their counterspell or another piece of removal ready or whatever, or you just hope that it's actually turned on in a creature or whatever at that time so that you can swords it or get to that point where you can actually draw into the other things that you need or whatnot, or just hope against hope that they, they kind of forget about it or just kind of go, it's too much. Or I got too much other stuff that I'm trying to do, so it's just not worth it or whatever. But it is what it is sometimes, and you just can't rely on that, obviously. But again, having this sort of removal in your back pocket is really good. At least knowing that you might have the chance to remove it versus being like, dude, I've got nothing in my deck that can deal with this thing, so I'm just screwed over. And I'm just going to sit here and die. That, or I've got to wait for one of my opponents to actually get their removal to get rid of the problem. And, they might not have something because, again, those enchantment gods are a very specific type to get rid of and very difficult to get rid of. There are some other artifact decks and enchantment decks where you go, no, I am sick of you recurring all of these enchantments or these artifacts or whatever. The main thing that you're really recurring that's really hurting me or whatever is this thing. Okay, cool. I am getting rid of this thing, That is it. It's gone. It's not coming back. Or if it's coming back, you've got to jump through a heck of a lot of hoops to get it back and whatnot. So I really, really like this card, if you can't tell by how much I've already talked about it. But yeah, I think it's great. But you guys can obviously let me know, do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong? Write your thoughts down there in those comments below. I'll be sure to get back to you guys and discuss it in those comments. But yeah, if I don't see you guys down there in those comments, I'll see you in the next one.